Does it seem like making hamburger buns would be a ton of work without a big payoff in flavor? I used to think the exact same thing until I needed a certain size bun for some smoked meatloaf sliders. I couldn't find what I wanted at the grocery store, so I decided to make my own. And oh my gosh, I could not believe the difference in flavor. And I knew exactly what was in them, no preservatives. Why have I been buying hamburger buns? This recipe is pretty simple. The big thing you have to remember is allow plenty of time for the dough to rise. And they freeze wonderfully, so stay tuned. I'm going to show you how I freeze these towards the end of the video. Are you ready to take your burgers to the next level? Well, come along, you're in the right place. I'm going to show you step by step how to do this. Grab your apron. Let's get started. The ingredients are very basic. You'll need some bread flour. I do recommend some bread flour and a little bit of all-purpose flour. It'll make the texture really nice. Of course, yeast, sugar, salt, milk, some unsalted butter, a couple of eggs. One of these eggs we're going to use as a wash on the top of the buns when they're ready to bake them, make them golden brown. The first step we're going to do is activate the yeast. And activating means we're checking to make sure the yeast is alive because that's what causes our dough to rise. We'll give the yeast something to feed on, which will be adding a little bit of sugar and flour to that yeast. You're going to need warm water. You can get this from the tap, not hot. If it's hot, you might kill your yeast and then your bread won't rise. If you have one of these instant read thermometers, this works great to check your water temperature, which you're going to want your water to be between 105 and 110 degrees. Pour the warm water into a small bowl, stir in the yeast, the lukewarm milk, and the sugar. Combining it well, and then let this set for about 5 minutes. This is going to activate the yeast. While we're waiting for that yeast to activate, get a large mixing bowl and mix the two types of flour and the salt, whisk them together. I'm using my heavy-duty stand mixer, but if you don't have a heavy-duty mixer, that's okay. You could also use a food processor, or of course you could do it by hand if you're in the mood for a big workout. Add the butter into the bowl with the flours and use your fingertips to pinch and rub the butter into the flour. It will end up looking like little crumbs. There, it's a little crumbly mixture. By this time, the yeast should have activated, and here's how it will look. See how those little bubbles have formed and it's kind of puffy looking? And you'll also smell a faint yeasty smell. If you don't see the bubbles, let it set for another 3 to 5 minutes. If at that point you still haven't seen bubbles, then you may have gotten your water too hot and killed the yeast. At this point, you need to start over with new yeast. And I know that's discouraging, but once you've successfully made a few recipes using yeast, you'll be familiar with how the water should feel for the right temperature. Add the yeast mixture and the beaten egg to the flour mixture, and you're going to mix this together with a regular beater, not the dough hook yet, just until a sticky dough forms. It didn't take long to get this sticky dough, so what you're going to do next is scrape the sticky dough off this regular beater. And then we're going to replace the regular beater with a dough hook. And we're going to beat it on medium speed, probably take us about 4 to 5 minutes. We want the dough to end up moist, but not sticky. All right, my dough's been kneading for 5 minutes. Let's check it and see how it is. Okay, it's still pretty sticky. So we're going to add a tiny bit of flour. I'm going to be adding a half a tablespoon. Now resist the urge to add too much flour because that can ruin your final results. So I'm going to add that half tablespoon of flour. We're going to knead it for another 2 to 3 minutes and then we'll check it again. Okay, well, we've kneaded another 2 to 3 minutes after that last addition of flour. Let's check it again. All right, still pretty sticky. So I'm going to add one more half tablespoon of flour, and we're going to knead for another 2 to 3 minutes. Another 2 or 3 minutes of kneading, and let's see how it is. Okay, there's what we're wanting. It's moist, but it's not sticky. While the dough was kneading, I got a large bowl. I put about half a tablespoon of olive oil in it, and I lightly coated it with the oil. The next thing we're going to do is take the dough and put it out onto the lightly floured dough board or the countertop, because we're going to form this into a ball for it to rise. Easier said than done getting it out of the bowl, as you can tell. All right, there we go. So I lightly floured the surface, and then you're going to take the dough in your hands, and you can put a little bit of that olive oil on your hands too if you want, and just fold under the edges. I'm taking this and folding under like that, and put it in your bowl, and then just turn it around so that all the edges are covered with olive oil. And make sure your final turn that you put the smoothest side on the top. Cover this bowl with plastic wrap, and you're going to let it rise until it's doubled. You're going to let it rise in a warm spot until it's doubled. It should take anywhere from 1 to 2 hours. And the key here is the double size of the dough, not how much time it takes. But let's talk about some options about where you can put this dough while it's rising. My oven has a dough proofing feature on it, so that's where I'll be keeping my dough. Another option, my mother used to turn the oven light on when she started the dough, and by then when she's ready to go, the oven was heated up enough that she would just put her dough in there. Another option is boil a couple of cups of water in your microwave, let that heat up for 4 or 5 minutes, then open the door, take the water out, put your dough in, and let it rise till it's doubled. The dough has doubled in size. Doesn't it look great? I can't wait for you to see the finished result on this. These hamburger buns are so delicious. If you like what you're seeing, then hit the like button for this video and also the subscribe. So we're going to turn the dough out onto a countertop or onto a dough board, and we're going to divide it into equal pieces. This dough makes 8 hamburger buns, about 4 inches in diameter. If you want yours larger or smaller, just adjust accordingly for your dough balls. So now we're going to divide it into equal pieces. You can use a dough scraper like this if you have that, or table knife works. If you want to get really exact, you can use a kitchen scale. I've divided the dough into 8 equal pieces and put them on a lightly floured pastry board. My dough's a little bit sticky still, so I'm going to use just a tiny bit of flour as we shape it into a ball. Don't get carried away with the flour though, because it can affect the final result. So take the piece of dough and start pinching the edges, pulling the edges under. I'm not touching the top of it, I'm just gently pulling those edges, and I'm pinching what I'm pulling. As I take it underneath, I'm pinching it. There, like that. Once you get a nice dough that's evenly flat like that, then you're going to put it on a parchment lined baking sheet, 2 to 3 inches apart. Depending on what size dough balls you've made, you may need 2 baking sheets. Once you've formed the dough balls, cover the baking sheet loosely with a clean kitchen towel. Let it rise on the kitchen counter until doubled, about 1 to 2 hours. Once again, you're looking for dough that has doubled, not how much time has elapsed. When the buns have almost doubled in size, take a large pan of water, put it on the lowest rack of your oven, and fill it with about 1 inch of water. I'm using the roasting pan that came with my oven. And you're probably wondering why we do that. The water will create steam, which will keep the top of the buns from hardening too quickly and therefore allow the dough to fully rise. Preheat your oven to 400 degrees. Well, as you can see, the buns have doubled in size, so take 1 egg and beat it with 1 tablespoon of water. Brush the entire surface of the bun gently with the egg and water mixture, making sure you get all the way around and also get down to the very bottom edge of the bun. This will give them a beautiful golden brown color. At this point, if you want to, you could also sprinkle with sesame seeds or poppy seeds to get it really fancy. Bake these at 400 degrees for about 15 minutes or until the tops are golden brown, turning the baking sheets halfway through the baking time. Once they're finished cooking, they're golden brown, remove them from the oven, put them on a wire rack to cool completely. These freeze beautifully, and here's how I do it. I don't split them. I just wrap each bun in plastic wrap, and then I put them all in a zip top bag, put them in the freezer. They'll last for 2 to 3 months. Although at my house, they never last that long. We'll eat them way before then. Oh, these are so delicious, toasted and with my homemade sloppy joe. It's so yummy. So if you made these, give me a comment and let me know how they turned out. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.